Alright guys, so hope everyone's well and welcome back to the Improvement Podcast. So this episode's going to be a bit different from usual, as I'm going to be giving you an update on how my competition prep's going. And the reason being is I just think it would be valuable to yourselves to hear and maybe interesting for some. And I do try and keep this podcast educational and try to give you value, and I think there's still a lot of value to offer in talking you through what I've basically done during my diet, even if you aren't preparing for a bodybuilding show, which I don't think most of you are, but you can still take a lot from it in terms of the decisions I've made, why I've made for the decisions, in terms of setting it up and executing the competition prep, or basically a extended fat loss phase, which I'll be getting pretty lean in anyway. And in terms of where I'm at the moment, so I'm currently 8 weeks out on the following Monday coming, so 2 days after this will be released. So I did start my competition prep for my natural bodybuilding shows at 24 weeks out, and my body weight so far has went from 194 pounds to 172 at the lowest. Right now it's slightly higher, which I'll get to why it is. But yeah, my body weight's obviously down 22 pounds, so a decent bit to lose. And in terms of how it's went pretty smoothly, to be fair. There's not always a ton to comment on. It's like when I come on the podcast and give updates on how things are, when people are asking how competition prep is, most of the time the answer should be, you're not bad. There shouldn't be anything crazy to comment on, because if performance was getting better at this stage, I probably wasn't being consistent with my variables before now, because I shouldn't be really progressing much now, to be honest. And if anything crazy is changing, then I'd question why is it changing, because most of the time things shouldn't change much. It's just a case of repeating the same things in the gym, slowly chipping away body fat. So yeah, there's not always a lot to comment on. But yeah, it's went pretty smoothly. The last couple of weeks before this one I've felt pretty draggy, and there's a lot of side effects to when you're losing a decent bit of body fat. Like, my mood's been a bit down, not down as in I'm feeling down, but down as in I'm irritable, I'm a bit more crabby, I've not got as much energy, performance isn't as good during the gym, and overall, obviously, those things aren't putting you in a good position. But part of it, to be honest, it's like, I know it's obviously there are potentially negative side of things, but I enjoy the process, enjoy what I'm doing, and I'm excited to see how I can get on. And in terms of the current week I'm on the now, so I'm currently on week, I was 9 weeks out last Monday. I'll be 8 weeks out this Monday, so I'm about 8.5 weeks out. Sorry, and this current week has been a diet break and also a devolume week. So a diet break is basically when you get your calories up to around your perceived maintenance. And the reason why I've done this is because, or my coach has done this, is because when you're constantly pushing, it can drain you, meaning you accumulate fatigue from dieting, like, just because if you're dieting for, even if you lose the same amount, if you're dieting for, let's say, 1 week and you lose a kilo, or you lose a kilo and you're dieting for 10 weeks, meaning you lose 10 kilos, because of the overall duration and the overall amount lost, you will feel worse. You will feel more tired, because like it takes its toll on you. You're constantly in an energy deficit, which isn't putting you in a good spot energy wise and health wise. So it just gives me a goal to drop that diet fatigue that I've accumulated and to get some fullness back, if that makes sense. So fullness is like when you're looking, it's like when you've got a good pump, when your muscles are nice and full looking, you've got plenty of blood in them, and they just look nice and big, if that makes sense. So it doesn't mean I've lost muscle, but just regaining fullness is when, like, I'm having more carbohydrates, I'm having more calories, I'm not dieting and draining myself of food, if that makes sense. and I've just got a bit more fullness back, got some more carbohydrates and fullness in my muscles, if that makes sense. And as a result, it'll basically mean I've got an improved look. I've been looking like I just look bigger. I've been looking more vascular, and I've been looking harder, meaning like leaner, if that makes sense. You could also say it can raise your metabolic rate. For example, I've had my food increased a decent amount, so I can't tell you how much calories it is because I don't know myself, but I've had like 100 grams of rice added, and then around 83 grams of ground rice, which is called cream of rice in other words. So yeah, decent amount. And also on my rest days I've had 100 grams of rice and then a bit with my last meal. I think like something like maybe I think like 50 grams of ground rice. So yeah, I've had more carbohydrates added back in, and my weights went up slightly. My weights went up from 172.2 I believe to 173, and it's just been sitting there. That's not 0.8 kilos of fat. That's just me storing more glycogen in my muscles because I'm not dieting, because I'm not in a deficit now. As a result, from this dieting break, I've felt so much better. My energy's much better. Performance has been better. I've been taking a couple of progressions this week, whereas I was struggling to the other weeks. And overall, I'm just in a much better spot. And I'm not dragging my legs the same. And this can potentially mean like I'm a lot fresher. I'm in a much better position now. So when I continue dieting, you might see me respond very well to it because I've dropped the fatigue, I've dropped the tiredness. I'm in a better position. And if like I'm holding my weight better on more food, then when the food gets taken away, because I've not got that tiredness built up over weeks and weeks and weeks, I can potentially lose more weight eating the food I was eating before my diet break, if that makes sense. I've also got a devolume week this week. So that's basically when you only do one working set or one hard set to failure per exercise. And the reason I'm doing a devolume week is again to drop training fatigue. So similar to that I was on about with dieting, it's like when you're training to failure, training hard 5 days a week for weeks and weeks on end, you accumulate fatigue from it, which is just physical and mental tiredness. And the reason we want to drop this fatigue is fatigue decreases motor unit recruitment, which basically means muscle retention can suffer, because if we can't recruit as much motor units, if we can't recruit as much muscle fibers as a result of it, we can't retain as muscle as effectively. We can't maintain our strength well. We can't perform well in the gym, which leads to like a poorer look, a poorer amount of muscle mass. So it makes sense to drop that fatigue, and fatigue can also cause things like poorer sleep, like I said, poorer performance, poorer digestion. So it's really important to manage this when you're dieting, especially if you're getting super lean, because it makes a big effect. And timing it with that diet break works well, meaning going back up to maintenance, because when you think about it, if I'm dieting aggressively but I'm trying to back off what I'm doing in the gym, do less sets, you could argue, will I retain my muscle as well? Because I'm not doing as much to get that muscle to stick around. And there's also the point, if I'm, let's say, doing a devolume week to drop fatigue, but I'm fatiguing myself dieting, then I'm not really in the best position to drop that fatigue. Same applies, let's say if I didn't do the devolume week but I'd done a diet break, I'd be just accumulating more fatigue during training while trying to drop that fatigue. Yes, it'll still help, but to the same extent, maybe not. So that's why it kind of works well. And then during this week, I'm keeping my rep ranges on the higher end, so around 8 to 12. And I'm not really going super lower that. And the reason being is if I'm doing one set, I want the set to be in a good rep range to retain and basically have an effective set, to retain muscle, simple as that. Because if, let's say, I'm spending the one set of bicep curls I have doing 5 reps, and it's probably not going to be ideal for retaining the muscle in my arms, in my opinion anyway. I think I'm better in that 8 to 10, 8 to 12 rep range. And in terms of like if you do need a diet break or devolume week, so I know I've just made a podcast and I'm talking about running through these things, so it's like, why am I telling you about this? From a coaching experience, for the most part, you do not need a devolume week or a diet break. It depends where you're at, of course. I can't look at everyone who's listening to this right now and tell you specifically, but for the most part, most people don't. A devolume and a deload is just to drop fatigue from training, and most people miss training sessions now and then anyway, if it's every couple of weeks for like a family event or a holiday or doing something different. If you miss a couple days of training now and then you probably don't need a devolume week or a deload week, or a deload is just a couple of days off training. You probably don't need that because you're already having it, you're automatically having it for just taking time off the gym anyway. And as for a diet break, do you need a diet break if you're just trying to run a fat loss phase? Probably not, because the goal should be to kind of just get in and out that phase. You've not, like, unless you're getting to like a extremely low level of body fat, then most of the time you'll be fine without, because you're not in that position yet, if that makes sense, where you're super lean and you need it. And as well as that, you're probably better just getting in and out that dieting phase. Unless you've been dieting for a super long and aggressive manner, then you're probably fine without it. It's better just getting in and out that phase. Especially if you're doing it a bit more casually, and you might have weeks where you go out at the weekend or have a family meal out and you don't lose much weight that week, and that's kind of doing it to an extent already. And like a maintenance phase or slight gaining phase might have some merit if, let's say, you're in a diet for a long period. Let's say you've got a lot of weight to lose. Let's say you're someone, you might class yourself as overweight or would have in the past, and you're dieting but your calorie intake's now super low, your expenditure, so your steps are super high. Then a maintenance phase or going in a slight gaining phase for a while just to try and progress well and work your calories back up a bit more to then push further down to diet a bit more, might have a good idea. But yeah, for the most part, you don't need a devolume week or a diet break unless you are training super hard, not missing a session, doing that week over week, month over month, then you may consider it. But it also depends on your level of strength as well, because someone who's lifting, let's say a deadlift, they're doing 80 kilos for 10 reps, that's going to produce less fatigue than someone who's doing 180 kilos for 10 reps, even if the effort's the same on both sets, just due to the overall weight you're lifting. But yeah, hope you enjoyed this episode and a bit of an insight. So yeah, quick summary. Currently 8.5 weeks out, started at 24 weeks out. It's went pretty smoothly so far. This is the first time I've kind of brung myself back up to a calorie maintenance and stopped dieting. But before then I was just dieting all the way through. I'm 20 pounds down and I've still got a decent bit to come off, in my opinion. Which is weird because, like my coach was saying, like you're in a pretty lean place for the now. But I look at myself and I'm thinking there's so much more to come off, just because you're never content with how you're looking, and you always see folk on social media who look better than you, and it's that like comparison as well as just never being satisfied with where you're at. But yeah, I'm looking forward to see how I'll do. I might do another one of these when I've got more need to make one, if that makes sense, because if, let's say, 2 weeks from now everything's the same, not much has changed, which, like I said, not much changes really, not much should change if you're consistent, so there's not really any need to. But yeah, always going well for the most part. I'm happy with it and excited to see how we'll get on. So I appreciate everyone listening to the podcast. Let me know if you've got any questions, any episodes you want covered, that sort of thing, and if you can, leave a rating and review if you enjoyed it.